it was absolutely that people started thinking, well, some brave brands started thinking that, we should actually try engaging instead of broadcasting. And I think also we had a couple of things that happened to us that sort of propelled us into sort of national fame.
Welcome to the Purposeful Project. We help entrepreneurs for free. On the Purposeful Project podcast, we share real-life stories from some of the world's most successful entrepreneurs. We like to think our podcast will provide mentorship to those that need it and give you access to the knowledge you need to start and scale a business. To hear these incredible stories, follow us on Spotify, Apple Music, or anywhere you listen to podcasts, or you can simply visit purposefulproject.com. Welcome to the podcast, Justine. It's so wonderful to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
It's an absolute pleasure, Simon. Pleased to be here.
Well, maybe we could start off by you kindly telling the audience a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yes, sure. So my name is Justine Roberts. I am the CEO and founder of Mumsnet and Grandsnet. They are websites, and Mumsnet has been around for 20 years. It's a website for parents where parents can swap advice, information, support, friendship and fun. And Grandsnet we started about 7 years ago, and it's very much the same thing, but for grands.
I always love founders because actually surprisingly humble. And I was just looking at the numbers, and correct me if this is out of date because we grabbed this from the internet, so it could be like, you've got 10 million unique users per month. I mean, this is an incredible business you've built up. I'd lead with that personally. If I had 10 million listeners to my podcast, it'd be the first thing I said before introducing you or myself. So, but I know I think it's always humble when people just describe what they do. But it's incredible what you've achieved. And I mean, you started this business in 2000. That was also a pretty tough year to start an online business, right? So maybe do you mind telling us a little bit about that time and what happened?
Yeah. Well, it was the time, if you cast your mind back to the sort of internet gold rush, and you couldn't actually really meet anyone in the street without sort of them telling you what their internet startup idea was. And lots of people had internet startup ideas, and I got mine when I went on holiday with my then nearly 1-year-old twin girls, and we picked it was the most disastrous holiday really for all sorts of reasons, but mainly because we were such ingenues as parents and had no idea what we were doing. So we went to the wrong destination in the wrong time zone. It was certainly the wrong resort, and frankly it was with the wrong children, and we had a miserable holiday along with frankly most of the parents who were on in that destination too. And it sort of occurred to me that it would be nice to swap information about this and before we left, so we didn't waste a load of money. And of course, then it wasn't just holidays, was it? It was everything to do with parenting and kids, for which we are not very well trained. I certainly wasn't. And yet it's one of the most important things we do. So there was this thing called the internet. It hadn't been around too long. But it seemed like a really good idea to be able to tap into the wisdom of others who'd been there and done that. And that's really what we're still doing to this day. We're allowing people to tap into others' wisdom in the sort of belief that makes parents' lives easier.
It makes so much sense now, of course, looking back, that a platform like yours would do so well. But at the time, did you feel that? Was there apprehension? Did you feel like it was a big risk? How did it feel back then?
It was, as I say, it was in a time when everyone was thinking about what their web business would be. But actually it was fortunate in a way for me that I was uniquely in a position, I think, or not uniquely, but I was in an unusual position where I could give it a go, because I'd actually, as soon as I got pregnant, left my job in investment banking, knowing that this was no place to raise kids, really, no place to be a mum. And I'd seen that from the example of people who'd got on, especially women who'd got on. They'd really done it by pretending their family didn't exist. So the luck for me was that not only did I have an idea, I don't think it was rocket science, by the way, it was just, an idea, but I actually had the sort of time and space because I'd taken a career gap. I'd actually started writing about football, but that was very much on a freelance basis, to give something a go. And so that was the good luck. The bad luck, of course, was that the dot-com bubble burst pretty damn quickly, and people went from being very excited about the internet to actually, really thinking it might be a flash in the pan and it wouldn't last very long. And certainly all the funding went away. So that proved a bit of a battle.
It's incredible to think that there was a time like that. A lot of my listeners are quite young, coming out of university, thinking of starting a business of their own. The concept that the internet could be a flash in the pan just is insane, isn't it? But I remember that time myself, so I know exactly what you mean. I started a web design company in 2001, and people are like, what is the point? No one cares. And so absolutely an incredible moment. But I mean, I guess just looking at that, a lot of people would be listening thinking, wow, you've got twin girls, 1 year old. It really doesn't sound like the ideal time to start a company. And so...
Well, again, I was lucky because I had a friend who had taught himself to code. So he never actually, until much later joined the business. He did all this on a part-time basis. He actually could go and build something. And then I think... the other piece of the pie was, whilst it was very hard not to raise money, because clearly we had an exciting business plan, and the sort of mantra then was land grab, scale up as fast as you can, potentially, sell quite quickly as well. But the fact that everything dried up for a bit and no one really, all the money went, and that means all the competition went. There were quite a few well-funded competitors that disappeared quite quickly. And because we hadn't raised money, we didn't have a high cost base, and we could build Mumsnet in the way that really it needed to be built, which was kind of organically and by word of mouth, because there was no business model. Our model is essentially an advertising model, and brands then were very, very skeptical about advertising on the social web. They certainly didn't want to engage with real people. They just wanted to broadcast. So the idea that real people could potentially criticize them was not something they were going to do. And it really didn't change until Facebook arrived and Twitter arrived, sort of 4 or 5 years later. And suddenly everyone was going, oh, Web 2.0, the social web, that's the thing. And I sort of looked at my co-founder and said, we're Web 2.0. This might work for us after all, having sort of existed from a back bedroom on a shoestring for 5 years with no revenue at all to speak of.
I think you brought up a really important point around building a business and having no money, how it can be a good thing. I think that's a really interesting thing for my listeners to pick up on, because I think so many people want to start a business and they think they need money to do it. But sometimes having a scarcity of money can create a lot of innovation. And I'm guessing that's what's happened in your business, right? You had to innovate.
Yeah, and I think we did have to innovate, but even more than that, we almost started at the wrong time. So, as I alluded, until Facebook and Twitter came along, people were very mistrusting of the social web. Not our users, but certainly, business and advertisers. So having no money meant we could hang on in there because we didn't have a big burn rate. We didn't have a big cost base. We didn't have an office in Clerkenwell. And had I raised money, and I tried to raise £4.5 million, then we would have had all those things and frankly wouldn't have lasted very long. It was the fact that what was required was, keeping the cost base very low until the timing was right. And I think probably a lot of businesses maybe are good ideas and good businesses, but their timing's a bit off. And being able to survive that was really a function of actually having and not spending any money. Because we saw lots of businesses similar to us in the same space, die a very painful death where they had to lay off reams of staff, and once you've sort of lost that trust, you never get it back again. So, and I'm also very skeptical of the venture model generally, because their aims are not necessarily aligned to those of the entrepreneur, because what they're looking for is the 1 in 10 big hit, and they don't really mind if the other 9 fail. They're going to push you to grow and grow and grow, and that might be not the right model. A slower growth model might actually be the right model, as it was with Mumsnet. So I think people should think about it and not think that it's the only way to go about starting a business. I think you will be pushed if you raise venture money to grow at all costs, and sometimes growing fast is really hard, and it means you don't do things very efficiently. And in our case, it would have been the wrong thing, because we would have noticed after growing an enormous team that we didn't have any revenue, and it would have looked like a bad business. But in fact, what we needed to do was really wait out the slump and wait for the business world to catch up with what was going on, really. But meantime, we grew to scale. We grew our user base, and that was ultimately what we needed to become both a better product, but also a viable sort of business to advertise with.
So how did you, again, for my listeners, I understand how to build a business. How did you build that user base? What was the kind of process you went through to kind of build it up grassroots like that?
Yeah. Well, number one, it was really quite slow. If you look at the graph of Mumsnet unique users, it's pretty damn flat for the first 5 years. But there were two main ways I did it. Initially, Mumsnet is largely a forum. That's where most of the traffic is. It wasn't the original idea, but it became all about the forum. So to get that going, I actually started off with an awful lot of different usernames, and luckily I had a lot of questions. And I would ask myself different questions under different usernames. And so it was that kind of level of involvement where you are literally creating the content by being the user yourself. And I remember at one point, a friend of mine rang me up. She was pregnant, and she was having palpitations. She wanted to know if I'd had them when I was pregnant. And I said, well, I do know something about that, actually, but I'm only going to answer your question if you ask it on Mumsnet. And I sort of felt a bit guilty and rushed off to answer her. And by the time I got there, 2 people had answered. And so that was my eureka moment. There is actually someone else there. They found us. But I think the other big thing for me was I'd done a bit of journalism, and I managed to swing a gig where I wrote about a diary of a .com startup in the Times. So, I managed to get quite a few sort of quite a bit of awareness from having a weekly column talking about the trials and tribulations of starting a website once the .com bubble had burst.
I think it's really fascinating to hear entrepreneur stories. I love this concept of you sitting on the computer replying to yourself with the answers. It makes me smile. I think it's just it is.
Also, arguing with myself, because obviously,
controversy works, right?
I was a very inexpert parent, so luckily I had lots of counter views even within my own head,
right,
about how to do. So.
Yeah, I feel the same way about entrepreneurship. That's why whenever someone gives advice on entrepreneurship, I always find myself giving the opposite advice just to give that person the different perspective. I guess it's the same with parenting, isn't it?
Yeah. No, it is. There's always, as we said, there's always more than one way to skin a cat, right?
Yeah, I'm wondering if you ever banned yourself. You're like, you're getting way too aggressive towards yourself there, and you're like, better ban that person. But
I didn't. I probably should have on occasion.
So, what other tips and tricks? I think I read a lot about like newsletters, for example. I feel like the outreach part, and did you do a lot of that sort of stuff?
We did, and we sort of. I mean, I think we involved the users as much as we could, and that became a very natural thing for us. One, because Mumsnet, by definition, is a sort of 24/7 focus group. But secondly, again, because we had no money, we had to ask them to support us at various times. And I would wake up and find, checks for 200 quid in the post saying, please keep going. So it naturally became that that our users became a stakeholder for us. And I think that, again, was more by luck than judgment, was the right model for growing a community. So we would consult our users on everything from, obviously design and product features, but also on who we might work with in a commercial sense. And I think, it's not a surprise that our users call themselves Mumsnetters. They believe they are, a very key stakeholder, as indeed they are. and have always been involved in the decision making. And that's tough. It means you're always under scrutiny, a lot of scrutiny, but I think it's kept us on the straight and narrow and kept us honest. And it's one of the reasons why, I think we get, so much brand loyalty and so much engagement is because people feel that they are part of something. It's not just a product.
It's Joey, it's such a lovely story to hear, the kindness of people. Someone sending you a £200 check and saying, "Please keep going." That is just amazing. I've built many companies, most of them quite selfish enterprises, building them as companies that make me money. This platform I'm building now, I think, is the first time I've actually built something where I just want to help people for free. And I was shocked recently when someone sent me $1,000 to support the platform. I didn't ask for the money, but it's just unbelievable. This community thing you're talking about, I've never experienced it before, and you've clearly been doing it for the last 20 years. But when you tell that story, it's just happened to me, and it really resonates. If you start people will give you money to keep you around with no need for anything in return, you've got something special, right? That is so unique.
I think you've kind of got product market fit. If people, I was getting emails saying, which I hadn't been really part of what I'd envisaged, but saying, Mumsnet's literally saved my life. I've found solace from people there. I've been helped through my kind of domestic violence relationship. I've been helped with my bereavement or my miscarriage. Or I've been taught to breastfeed in the middle of the night when no one else was there for me. I mean, it became much more powerful than we ever thought it would be. We thought it was going to be sort of TripAdvisor for parents. And then with a bit of expert advice from people who'd been there and done that. But actually it became more about support, people supporting through each other through difficult moments. And, I'm always minded of, I sort of grew up in the Thatcher years and her saying there's no such thing as society. But, that's just blatantly not true, because on Mumsnet people willingly go out of their way to help each other, and they're complete strangers. And they often have nicknames which certainly don't identify them. They are anonymous. And yet people will stay up till 3 in the middle of the night, hand-holding someone who's struggling with breastfeeding, and all the rest of it. So it's very... I don't know, it's good for the soul to see that much human kindness going on. And I know internet forums and social media can get a bad name with, and sometimes there's no doubt our users can be blunt. But on the whole, there's way much more kindness than there is nastiness. And it's not for any personal gain either.
I think it's good to look at the positive in humanity. I guess the news always, I think, highlights the negative, but stories like yours are inspirational. True story. And a sad one, but had a good ending in the end. But my wife and I were living in Hong Kong, and we had a miscarriage, and I'd never experienced the concept of a miscarriage, and so we Googled what to do, sort of thing, and Mumsnet came up, and we were in Hong Kong, and we read on there how people had dealt with it and the different types of things you can do once you've had a miscarriage, because it's not how I thought it was going to be, without getting too graphic on this podcast, but it wasn't how I thought it was going to be. Just, it's no longer there. It was still inside. And so, we didn't know what to do. And Mumsnet saved our life. And here's a kind of, I guess, an ungrateful element, which I don't like about human nature. When I read it on Mumsnet, and my wife and I read it, what it all meant and people's different opinions, and it really helped us. Yeah. But we didn't recognize the platform. We you know what I mean? We just thought, oh, that platform must be making money. I should have sent you a check, is what I'm saying. I think I should have made a comment at least saying thank you.
There's still
time. Yeah, there's still time. Yeah, but seriously, I think there's a lot of people out there that have had help from you and don't realise that it's you that's created it. You know what I mean? It's so big now. It's almost seen as a business. So you're providing a service to people, but that's, I guess, what happens when you scale. But yeah, true story. It helped us too. So thank you for that. I just wanted to go back to. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you. Sorry, did you say something?
No, it's my pleasure, and it's not really, when you say you built it, it's all about the people on it, giving up their time and their insights and their expertise. So, in that sense, it is a platform, and we, I don't take any personal.
I've got a feeling it was you on the other end now, though. Just joking aside, it was probably you on the other end typing away. Don't worry, it'll be fine.
No, exactly.
It's still you. You are those 10 million users. But I just wanted to go back to the early days, because a lot of the listeners listening in, I mean, they dream of starting a business, and I know some people who listen to our podcast have started a business, and it's got tough, and they've had to stop. And I was just thinking to what you said earlier, 5 years in and the curve is flat, right? That would be to some people an indication that the market doesn't want what you've got to offer. So how did you know that wasn't true, and how did you keep going and just trying to inspire those listening?
Well, because we had twin, if you like, there were twin markets we were operating in. One was, are we growing, are the people who are using us, even though there aren't fabulous amounts of numbers, finding the product incredibly useful? So I suppose it comes back to this product market fit thing. Would they shout if you tried to take it away? And would they notice, and would they care? And unequivocally, our users were getting the few people who were using it, and it was growing. It just wasn't growing exponentially in the way that it subsequently did at a later stage. But it was obviously incredibly useful to the people using it. So much so that they were sending checks and stuff like that. I think the flip side of that was, the business model wasn't there. So it was definitely, the reason we kept going was because people were, the engagement levels of the people using it were extraordinary. They were off the clock. They were writing and saying, this is, a lifesaver. So we could see the value. We just couldn't convince, anyone else who might want to sort of pay for it to see any value yet. So that, I think it was that kept, I always believed there must be a business in here somewhere. But for a while, honestly, it was run a bit like a charity, but it was a very useful charity.
So was there a moment where you thought to stop, or did you just never have that, never crossed your mind?
No, it didn't really, because I thought it had such utility. And I was in the lucky position, again, luck playing a factor, was, I had worked in an investment bank for 10 years. I'd sort of, I'd done my stint that gave me a bit of financial leeway. And I also had a supportive husband as well in the mix. So no, I did believe, even if it was never going to turn a profit, that it was a very useful and valuable thing to be doing, and a good use of my time, frankly.
I think this illustrates something I really believe in, which is purpose. And so if you have something that has enough purpose, then you're willing to put money into it, and you're willing to keep going, right? It feels like it had a very strong core that gave it that strength.
Yeah.
Which I think a lot of businesses lack. Right. A lot of businesses lack that.
I would have carried on doing it even if...
Was your burn rate quite high? I mean, you say it was low. I mean, was it an expensive business to operate in the early days? I mean, you have a website that's not cheap to operate these sorts of forum platforms, right? Hosting and so on.
Well, we begged and borrowed quite a lot. I had various people helping who were friends, and it wasn't expensive. No, we operated from a back bedroom. But I didn't earn a salary for 6 years. So, that was the kind of opportunity cost, as it were.
And another great lesson there, though, isn't it? Like do something with purpose, and you're willing to work out of your back room to do it. And that stuff doesn't matter. The service does, right? Okay, there's an important lesson in that point there. I think a lot of people will think that they have to get a fancy office and so on.
Yeah, and I think the key to it is, have you got something that people want? Even if you can't quite work out how to make the financials work or the business model work, are you providing a service or a product or, something similar that people really value? And we've always struggled with things like paywalls and getting the community to pay, because there's something philosophically difficult about having user-generated content and then charging people for it. And also, the scale of problems that people had were so urgent thinking of you and your, I'm very sorry about your miscarriage, but if you'd Googled and there'd immediately been a sign up here, you've got to subscribe, it actually feels wrong in people's hour of need to put a paywall up. So we were happy to carry on, basically, and I was fortunate in the position that I could afford to, because I knew it was really helpful. I knew it was getting bigger, and I knew one day that must be a valuable thing, and just required, it required patience.
That's a business model well known now, isn't it? Thanks to platforms like Facebook and so on, build up value and use and then monetize later. But that was definitely not the mindset in 2000. So it was a burn money mindset then, really, I guess, before the .com, and then afterwards it was about like make money or don't do it kind of mindset, was it? It completely flipped. It was burn money pointlessly before 2000, and then it was only do businesses that make money after 2000, right? It really, this model now that everyone seems to hear about with Facebook 8-9 years and making no income just doesn't really exist. It didn't really exist before. You pioneered it. So when did you figure out the business model? What changed to suddenly make it work? I mean, was it Facebook coming to the market, educating the market? What was the flip, do you think?
Yeah, I think it was a combination of things. So it was absolutely that people started thinking, some brave brand started thinking that, we should actually try engaging instead of broadcasting. And I think also we had a couple of things that happened to us that sort of propelled us into sort of national fame. Some of them a bit tricky. And the first one was we were sued by the leading childcare author of the day, and she tried to get us shut down. And that was it became quite an interesting thing. It was really about the fact that the libel laws for internet publishers hadn't really caught up with the internet at all. And so we were treated like a newspaper. So everything that was written on the platform, effectively, as far as this person who was suing us was concerned, was my own words. I was writing it. And she was a childcare author, and she was a bit of a polarizing figure, and people either violently disagreed with her or absolutely loved her and were fans of hers. So there was various debates about whether her methods were lifesavers or a bit cruel, and she took objection, and we became a bit of a cause célèbre for freedom of speech on the web. And for changing the libel laws. And so, that propelled, we were the lead item on Channel 4 News, and it was 2 weeks of, being in the spotlight that was, I won't forget, and many, many lawyers' letters, and it was sort of life-threatening, but again, it felt life-threatening, but there was a flip side of that was we were getting unbelievable amounts of publicity. And it propelled our users up. So that was one thing. And then I think very soon after that, David Cameron came and did a web chat on Mumsnet. So he'd just become leader of the Tory party. And they decided that they wanted to be seen to be modern. He just had a baby. He came and had a web chat with our users. And that began the sort of tradition, really, of the Mumsnet web chat with high-profile politicians, which... again, sort of propelled us into the public consciousness in a way.
What year was that, David Cameron?
So there was sort of 2006.
2006.
Yeah, 2006.
I think I vaguely remember that because I think there was some controversy because he was doing the interview from a kitchen that looked small, and it turned out it was the second kitchen in his home or something, and he tried to go to the second kitchen in his home to make it look like he was living a normal life. No, that's another fascinating insight from experience that you're sharing there, and I don't want my audience to miss it, that sometimes the bad things that happen to you are actually good things in disguise. And so it's fascinating to have that sort of it must have been quite stressful for you at the time, though. I mean, I'm sure you would have been happy not to have all that stress at the time.
Yeah, I mean, as anyone who knows who's gone through it was a bit like going through a divorce. You literally can't talk about anything else. And we had a year of being sued, really, and unremitting, legal attacks. And to give you a flavour, one of the complaints made was that one user had referred to this parenting guru as someone who straps babies to rockets and launches them into southern Lebanon. i.e., a joke, I would say, but didn't stop the lawyers' letters coming. You have to rebut them all. That's the thing. And that all takes time and money, and you become a bit of a bore whenever you enter something like that. I was quite pleased to end it all, even though in
there must have been a lot of memes around like nanny state and stuff like that.
One of the great reactions actually was our users. We banned all mention of this woman on our website because we couldn't guarantee that the mentions would not elicit more legal responses. And our users immediately christened her as She Who Must Not Be Named, which was very funny. And from then on, that's what she was known as.
I guess I think that these sorts of things are fascinating because they're, at the time you feel like it's the end of the world for your business, but then in hindsight, it's so fascinating to hear. I'm sure that was not their intention to make you even more successful, for example. So it's funny, the byproducts of positive versus negative. To me, it's always interesting to see, who wins in the long term in positive versus negative. And so, but yeah, I mean, the other thing is the nanny state, right? I kind of want to do a meme around it. There must have been some memes around nanny state because it's like, don't whatever you do, tie your baby to a rocket. It's crazy that you'd even have to like label that as this is not good advice, And so, it becomes ridiculous, doesn't it? Really, when the world gets that silly. But so you mentioned before that you tried to raise money and it didn't work. So what was it? The timing again? Was it the timing issue? That's why you didn't raise the money. Was it just the timing issue?
No, I think there was a credibility issue as well, and some of which was for good reason. But we did get quite close to raising £4.5 million actually from one investor, but he wanted to put someone else in charge, and in fact that person was a 25-year-old childless man, because I was clearly very doubtful about whether I could run this business. And with fair enough, if you're investing money, you kind of want to see someone who's run a business before. However, I do think the one thing that was in my favour was that, I was a mother and understood the target audience. So that I did turn that money down, thank God, as it turned out, because it would have been a big mistake, because I didn't want to give up before I'd started. But it was also, I remember going to all those meetings and it's pretty bad now, but the gender sort of balance then was extraordinary. And, there were mostly, young men looking for money, and there were mostly slightly older men giving the money, and the solutions they were, that caught their attention and caught their eye were solutions for men. And I think, that is an ongoing problem, although much less acute than it was, that I think, we're in danger of half the world's population not being served as well, because there isn't the investment going into sort of female-led and for female startups. So, it's a bit of a bear of money.
I think it's still a big problem. It's surprisingly not moved on as it should have done. I mean, when my son was born, I said to a lot of my male friends, I'm going to be a full-time father. And they're like, what? Why would you do that? That's kind of nothing you can do. It's the mother's responsibility to look after the child, sort of thing. These are what I would consider modern men. But that's kind of the perception even now. Like, why would you stop working, Simon, and be a full-time father? That's, you go back to work, almost like it's a secret. You just go back to work. It's easier. And it kind of shocked me how many people within my circle that were like that. And this is just recently. This is not 20 years ago. This is now. And so.
And all the evidence in lockdown has been that, working women, working parents, it's the mother who's picking up all the homeschooling. It's the mother who's picking up, most of the domestic tasks. So Unfortunately, it feels like we haven't made as much progress as I would have liked to have seen in the last 20 years. But having said that, I do think we have made some. And whenever we research this on Mumsnet, the younger the sort of parents are, the more equally they seem to share stuff. So that's a good thing.
It is. I co-parent with my wife, is how I put it. We share. I work 3 days a week. She works 3 days a week. But it's bloody hard work being a full-time parent. So I think that's the other thing. It's men have had it way too easy for way too long. I would say I've run companies with hundreds of people, but you try looking after a 3-year-old all day, and I'd say it's 10 times harder than running any business. But
there's also something important about the mental load as well. I think
totally.
It's interesting that, even when both parents work, it's who's doing the project management and who's liaising with the school and who's thinking about play dates and birthdays and holidays and stuff like that. And overwhelmingly, it's still the woman. And that is, in my view, one of the reasons why, women actually sometimes bow out of the workplace and or bow out of senior positions and don't go for that promotion because they've got so much else, so much other responsibility that isn't fairly shared. But anyway, you've got me on my hobby horse. I need to get off that.
No, don't. It's a subject I really like talking about, and actually for me, it's very relevant to entrepreneurship and founders and all of that because it all interlinks, to be honest. I mean, you started your business in a way because you were a parent and you saw the problem in the market. So I think this is an elongation of the problem in general of why some people can't start businesses because they don't have the support in their home to do that. And so I've started a business and my wife has started a business and we're both co-parenting and actually it's not easy, but it didn't feel fair that I start a business and she doesn't because she's still entrepreneurial. So it's a subject I'm also very passionate about. We could probably do a whole podcast series just on this subject because it's really fascinating. But I wanted to jump to a subject I always like to kind of understand when people are building out businesses like yours. So you're a sole founder. And I always find that very hard personally. And have you at points thought about bringing a co-founder in? How's it been being a sole founder? How do you think how have you managed to do that? I think.
So that's not strictly true. So I came back from that holiday and I roped in, as I said, my friend who could code, who was basically there right from the beginning and was our CTO for many years. And I also roped in a friend from antenatal class who was my I do think of them as my co-founders, but I think it was always very clear who the driving force was. I've always been the CEO, as it were. But there were other people around, and I would also say my husband was very involved from an early stage as well. So it wasn't like I was completely, doing it on my own. And nor do I agree. I think it is easier when you've got people to share particularly when it's not going so well, stuff with. But I do also think you need to choose people who have complementary skills, and I'm not sure people think very carefully about that when they start. I know I didn't. I just basically chose people who I fancied having a laugh with, really. And I think there's probably more thoughts that could go into that because it is a bit like a marriage. And when marriages go wrong, as we know, it can be tricky. And I've seen a lot of, businesses sort of end prematurely, get sold prematurely. And often it's because those founders just don't get on anymore.
Just so many bits of wisdom in there that I hope my listeners pick up on. I think that complementary skill set piece is really important. And what tends to happen when I see businesses go wrong is you're attracted to people that are similar to you. So I love having conversations with other marketing people, but probably having two what we term as conflicting marketing people in a business is only going to cause trouble, right? It's great as friends because you can debate and have something in common, but running a business together, you're going to be arguing quite a bit. And so, I couldn't agree more. Every business I've ever had that's actually worked, I've had a lot of failures personally, but every ones that have worked have always been with people that have a complementary skill set to you. Same moral code.
And I also think there's something about you need to be able to have regular and constant conversations about whether it's working in the same way as you probably do in a marriage. You need to schedule an annual chat because I see a lot of businesses where founders end up falling out because they put in different amounts of effort. So one is sort of viewing it a bit more as a lifestyle business. The other one wants to conquer the world. And that, causes huge amounts of tension. And being able to renegotiate every year and just having that as a formal structure, that you're going to meet up and you're going to honestly be transparently say, what you're prepared to put in and what you're contributing and what that's worth to the business, without it feeling like, you have to go through divorce proceedings. Putting that almost in your sort of manifesto at the beginning, I think is a really good idea.
I concur, and it's something that people are scared to do. In fact, I would say people in marriages that don't ever have arguments are probably in unhappy marriages. You've got to have those difficult conversations, right? You've got to have those.
You've got to have conflict.
Yeah, it gets you to meet each other in the middle quite often, right? So it's it's really important. How have you managed to stay innovative over all these years? I mean, when Facebook came into the market, it feels like you're so positive about it because it feels like it, in a way, it educated the market and so on. But it must have also been a bit scary.
Yeah, I suppose so. I mean, we in a way, Facebook, have their mantra that they were basically a data collection machine, and the last thing they wanted was for anyone to be anonymous. So in a way, we are very differentiated from the Facebooks and the Twitters of this world. I probably, if I'm honest with you, would say I'm not sure we have innovated as much as we should have. And I'm sure there's a bit of this podcast where you're going to ask me what I regret and what my mistakes are. And there are many, many, but probably the single biggest one is not investing in our technology soon enough. And not sort of realising that whilst we were a digital publisher, we should also be a tech business. And it's taken a while for that to come through. But I mean, in general, what do I think about innovating? I mean, we were quite lucky because we've made lots of amendments. But as I said, we had a 24/7 focus group telling us what to do, who were incredibly invested and didn't hold back. And I think generally the rule of thumb for innovation is stay close to your customer. And as Jeff Bezos says, start with the customer and work backwards. Start with the the dream, and then work out how you're going to get to it, rather than thinking of doing things which you think you're quite good at. So the innovation to me is all about the customer and all about understanding the pain points and trying to work out the solutions.
It's interesting, I guess, when that also leads to commercialization because. Who's the client, the person paying you or the person you're supporting? I guess Facebook has this conflict every day. Yeah, it's a difficult one, right?
Well, I think we've got two sets of customers, and they're, one is the commercial customer and one is our audience. And we need to service them both excellently, and they require obviously different things.
And where Facebook's gone wrong, in my view, and I hardly use Facebook anymore, I only use it to promote the podcast, but I feel like they went down the track of saying that the users were their customers and then selling their data. And so that in my view, proved that they are not the customer, right? So back to your point about anonymous, right? That's the last thing they want because they want to be able to sell that data to an advertiser who's their real client, right? So it's a really tricky thing to get right, and you have got it right, but it is a tricky thing. I think for people listening when they're trying to think of marketplaces, it is a really tricky thing, and I find it fascinating to study people like yourself that have done it right.
Yeah. Well, you say we've got it right, but we haven't made nearly as much money as Facebook. So, but I think for me, that we've always a bit, as you've said earlier, purpose comes before profit.
Yes.
We want to make a profit, but not at the expense of what we're trying to do here, which is make parents' lives easier. And it's, trying to prove that that's possible.
Yep.
And I think it is possible, but you're never going to make as much money probably, and that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that, and I'm afraid my poor investors have to be okay with that.
I think this is a message that needs to get out more. Again, I'm thinking of my audience who are starting businesses, and they read about the Mark Zuckerbergs of this world and how much they see the net worth figures coming out every month or every year. And I think the thing they're missing. I mean, I watched a video of Mark Zuckerberg walking down the street. 8 bodyguards. He had to buy the houses around him so that no one bothered him. Literally, I wouldn't want that life. Yeah. There's. I'm not saying we all want to make an impact and help people and so on. If you're a purpose-driven entrepreneur, but equally, I mean that comes with a price. That model and selling out your customers comes with a price, right? I mean, I think they're intricately linked, right? I'm going to call it karma if you want, but I think your model of like look after the customers, do right by them, build out a business that's sustainable over time. Money comes and goes, but it's easy to say when you've got money, but money only makes you happy if you're already happy. And so there is really something important in the message you're pointing out there. I think that I don't think you want Facebook's money. I think it brings them more trouble, and certainly for the founders than good, and it's certainly not good for the users. That's my instinct on it anyway. I might be a silent majority on that one.
Just a small fraction of Facebook's money would be good, but
yeah. Well, it's going to be interesting to see what happens to Facebook, because I'm quite pessimistic about their future, to be honest, because I just feel like they've commercialized way too much, and they really have lost track of what you were talking about earlier. Who is the client? I think they've lost their way on that. I don't think they know who their client is anymore. And so it's important. You mentioned something there that was, and I appreciate you because you're so open and honest, but you mentioned there about, the regret in investing in technology. I think your platform's quite good on the tech side, but when do you think, I'm thinking about people that have a business and they're wondering whether or not to invest in more tech. What do you think it was that made you not do it? What was going on there? Why did it take so long for you to invest in that, like you say?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think it's because I was so burnt by my early experience, which was only the sort of leanest survived. But I've basically been very stingy ever since. And as creating a best-in-class technology function requires a lot of investment. So I think it was just being, I never wanted to be a place which hired and fired, that sort of in the good years, ramped everything up, hired a load of people, and as soon as things got tough, you let people go. So I think I was burnt by that early experience and seeing all those companies fail, and I've just been a bit cautious on the spending front, wanting to have, not having being a bit shy about having a big cost base. And, I think that's ultimately we've had to do it anyway. I just wish I'd done it sooner, because the downside of having a sort of legacy platform which isn't in the more modern technologies and in the cloud and so forth means that you can't really develop very quickly. So it's a false economy, basically. I suppose the point is you're going to have to invest in technology eventually. The sooner you can do it, the better, because it will make you more efficient and it'll make you more agile. And all that has multiple benefits. When
your co-founder left, did you replace that role, or how did you at that time deal with that?
Yeah. He went to New York and still, even to this day, does bits and bobs for us. But yeah, I did. But I think it's hard to compete in the world of getting the best CTOs, but that's where we should have been competing. And I think, it's having a really strong tech team when you're a digital business is in the end really, really sound investment. And I think it's taken me a while to understand that, that people investment is your infrastructure. I mean, and it's worth paying up for the best people rather than sort of compromising a bit. And I think there are many reasons for that. One is obviously you tend to get better people, you pay more, but also you can delegate and trust more. And that actually is the only way you can scale. If you can't actually let some decision making go and trust the people to get on with it, you'll interfere too much, and that piss everyone off. But B, you actually can't replicate yourself, so you have to be able to delegate. And for me, the sort of light bulb moment of being able to delegate, I always thought I was a terrible delegator, but actually I wasn't. I just wasn't really. I didn't really bring in enough talent. So you've got to bring in people, and we do routinely bring in people who are much, much better than me, and that's then delegation becomes a lot easier.
Another great lesson there. I think I also did the same mistake. I for years thought I was the only one that could do certain things. And then when I hired people, I realized there was people out there a lot better than me. But you have to take a bit of a chance on the cash flow and stuff like that. That's sometimes the jump that people have difficulty doing, right?
Yeah, no, I think people are the sort of the key, and hiring the right people and getting those decisions right and paying up for the 10Xs of this world is what really moves the business on, I think.
Did you always feel like you were an entrepreneur? I'm just thinking again about my audience. A lot of people don't think they're entrepreneurs. They've been trained. It's almost been trained out of them. Actually, they kind of think that they're not entrepreneurs. Did you know you were, or your parents entrepreneurs? How did this manifest itself for you?
No, and it makes me laugh actually, because I'm still not sure I'm an entrepreneur. I think I started something. It's interesting, and there is a bit of a sort of difference between men and women here. I think women often say they start something. Men say they're entrepreneurs when they open a cupboard. It's something, and maybe it is our sort of we're too much social conditioning, but it feels a bit aggrandizing. I mean, there was a problem that I thought needed solving, and I thought it would be useful. But that doesn't mean that I'm the best person at taking risks and raising money and spending money and building businesses. I just attacked a problem that was very relevant to me. So I don't know, and the way that entrepreneurs are fated always makes me laugh as well, because actually, there are plenty of other professions which probably require as much skill and risk taking and all the rest of it. So maybe I'm being a bit, I don't know, maybe I'm being a bit sort of deflating about the whole thing, but I think there's a lot of luck involved. I think it's actually about solving problems, and people solve problems in many different aspects of life.
I think the word.
What do you think?
I think it needs rebranding, doesn't it? It needs rebranding. It should be, and we need some acronym for like someone starts a business solving a problem. It doesn't have to be this kind of grandiose word, entrepreneurship, as if it's something particularly unusual.
Yeah.
And that's one of my problems with it, because I think there's a lot of people out there right now who can't find a job and have been told they're not entrepreneurs, because an entrepreneur is, Gary V. They look a certain way and they speak a certain way, and that's just not true. And if you go back to what your fundamental point, there's a problem out there and you want to solve it. There you go. Don't label yourself. Just go and do it. Right. So, but what about your parents? Were they entrepreneurs out of interest? Well, let's call them business people. Did they have their own businesses? We'll get rid of the word entrepreneur for a minute.
No one's run their own business. My mum was in teaching, and my dad worked for IBM. So no, I've always been interested in business. I did an economics degree, But yeah, I mean, and I would have loved to have done an MBA actually, but I sort of feel I'm kind of doing that in the real world, yeah. So no, and as I say, I'm not even sure. Just because you've started something that solves a problem, I mean, look, I'm not. I've learnt an awful lot, and I'm definitely kind of, if I only I knew. and then what I know now kind of thing, I would have done everything much quicker and much better. So I'm not suggesting that it hasn't been a learning journey and that I'm not sort of slightly wiser than I was when I started. But is it an entrepreneur? I don't know. I don't know. Not in the typical sense where you go and raise loads of money and conquer the world and go international and all that kind of stuff, and then sell it and then float your business and all that kind of stuff. Haven't done much of that.
Ask your kids what they think you are. I just did that to my 3.5-year-old, and he turned around and said, "Daddy, you're TikTok famous." I'm like, I don't even know what I had to explain. What kids pick up? I bet your twins now are 22, right? 21, 22 years old now, are they?
Yes, and I've got a couple of others as well. So,
yeah, and 2 dogs. So you've got a full house, right? 2 dogs as well.
Yeah, 2 dogs.
Yeah,
they're the real trouble.
I know dogs. You can't bring them on holiday with you, for example. So they're a lot more work actually. But so your kids. I've got a couple of questions. I know we've only got you for a little bit longer. Just a couple of questions to wrap up. But I was interested in this kind of concept of work-life balance because you initially built the business out of your living room. You've had twins. Your partner's involved. Your husband's involved in your business. This work-life balance that seems to come up a lot. How to get it. Have you got a view on it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have a very good delineation between work and life. My life, life is partly my work, and work is partly my life. And I'm listening out for things that are of interest to me and Mumsnet all the time. In what some might view my free time, but it's a passion and it's what I'm interested in. So I don't feel a great need to, to separate the two. And it would be impossible anyway. I mean, if I'm talking to, someone about some partnership they might do with Mumsnet, but I also happen to be having dinner with them and they're, I'm meeting them on a social occasion, it doesn't really feel like work. But I do think with kids, you have to work hard to carve out time where you're really present. Danger with all, these devices that we're surrounded by is that, you get this idea of having one AirPod in while you're, talking to your kids or you're checking your phone the whole time. I think that is not that healthy. So my sort of way of dealing with that is I've tried to sort of create, almost diarise time where I am free of interruption. And that's any kind of interruption, but particularly work interruptions. So I can actually be present. So that's the way I think it's not so much that work intervenes, it's that, my mobile phone intervenes. And I think it's so addictive as a device, and, there's so many things popping up. So notifications off, phone off, and make sure that you're present when you for the times you can be with them that you need to be present.
Well said. I'm doing a bad job at that personally. I'm trying to be better at it, but when you've been locked down, it's actually quite hard because you're working and my 3.5-year-old the other day, we went out to get a coffee and I looked at my phone and he shouted at me, "Daddy, get off your phone." Everybody looked at me and kind of judged me your 3.5-year-old is so right. And it's very tricky to live life.
Yeah. I was very pleased to get an office eventually after sort of 7 or 8 years of working from a back bedroom. And I remember, even today I have horrific memories of being on Radio 5 Live with both my twin toddler daughters banging on the other side of the door, not understanding that I was at work.
No, they don't. They have no comprehension, right? They're like, just stop that for a minute and give me attention. My son, I was doing a podcast the other day, shouted up the stairs, "I need a poo." I'll be right down to help you with that. So, because they have no idea, but that's part of the fun, isn't it? But
yeah, I think the world's become more forgiving. It's a great thing about lockdown. It's our families have inevitably entered our work world a bit more on Zoom.
Yeah, no, I think I agree, and we accept people's lives. We get to see people's lives behind them on screen too, so that's kind of interesting. Well, look, I'm conscious of time. I want to thank you for coming in. I'm just gonna one last question to end the podcast. If you went back to your younger self and gave some advice, what would it be?
I would say probably don't sweat the small stuff. This isn't just about work. This is about, although there is something very key about work, I think do less better is a good mantra for running a business. But no, I mean, just a lot of, and it's what Mumsnet is all about. It's about tapping into the wisdom of people who've actually come out the other side and can tell you it's not such a big deal. It's only a phase. Don't worry about the small stuff. Don't, fret about, if you're a parent, don't fret about, are they always having homemade organic vegan chia pots in their lunch? To take shortcuts, because you can't be perfect at everything, and work out what really matters and make sure you're present for that bit.
I like take shortcuts. It's so true, and your platform and what you've done, it resonates with me on so many levels. As a parent, it resonates with me. As a business person, I'm not going to get rid of the word entrepreneur. As a business person, it resonates with me because I think part of what we're also trying to do is show knowledge to those that have come out the other side. To use your terminology, as parents, as people, business people that have come out the other side after, in your case, 20 years of experience of building a platform out, and let people know exactly what you're saying there. Don't sweat the small stuff. Do less better. It's such positive and important message to get to the next generation of business people. So I want to thank you for taking the time to share your story, which is inspirational, and thank you for creating a Mumsnet and Grandsnet, and thank you for coming on this podcast and telling us your knowledge.
Well, it's been a pleasure, Simon. Really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Purposeful Project podcast today. If you got any value from this podcast, then do feel free to give us a review and give us your feedback. And if you think anybody out there might enjoy this story of this real life successful entrepreneur, then feel free to share. And of course, go and visit purposefulproject.com and join our mailing list at any point. Thanks again for listening.